Persona 5 is without a doubt one of the most amazing and influential games of our generation, yet that doesn't stop it from being surrounded by a myriad of controversies. From silly mistakes to shady business practices, I thought it would be fun to compile every controversy facing the game, big or small, along with sharing my thoughts on each of them. So sit back, relax, and let us start from the very beginning. First announced in 2013, Persona 5 was delayed 2 whole times from its original 2014 release date, making its way to the Japanese audience in 2016, followed by another series of delays before finally releasing in the West. That's to say, it was undeniably worth the wait, as it quickly rose to critical acclaim and has been cited as one of the greatest role-playing games of all time, making it the best-selling entry in the Megami Tensei franchise. However, after the release, things quickly started to go south when the publisher of the game, Atlus, released a set of ridiculous restrictions for both videos and live streams of the game, urging content creators and fans to refrain from showcasing boss battles, major story moments, animated cutscenes, and even discussing the game's characters, among many other limitations. One of which being a ban on presenting anything past the infamous date of the 7th of July, with threats of content ID claims, channel strikes, and account suspensions towards anyone who tried to do so. In turn, many content creators decided to avoid streaming the game for this very reason, in fear of going out of business and losing their livelihood. Though a good chunk of fans didn't take kindly to the threats coming from Mr. Atlus, deciding to play the entire game while disregarding the streaming guidelines. Some even going as far as to purposely spoil the game for others out of spite. While some may say that Atlus had good intentions by putting these restrictions in place to help new fans avoid spoilers, I think most of us can agree that this was a very strange decision, as most other video game developers encourage their players to stream and talk about their game, rather than shoving ludicrous restrictions in their face and handing out threats. This controversy ended with Atlus giving a rather lackluster apology, stating, "We want to apologise to those of you who saw the previous guidelines blog post as threatening. We want to be transparent about what we do, and the reason we released the guidelines was to give streamers the right information up front. It was never our intention to threaten people with copyright strikes," followed by a much needed loosening of the aforementioned restrictions. However, the story doesn't end quite yet. Most would assume that Atlus would have learned from their mistake and wouldn't attempt something like this again. Yet something that has gone over many people's heads is that they've put similar restrictions in place for Persona 5 Royal, Strikers, and even the recent Royal re-releases, urging fans to not show off any new content or uploading music tracks, even going as far as preventing the PlayStation and Nintendo Switch's integrated screen capture features from working past certain in-game dates. Though in their defense, the new guidelines aren't nearly as strict as vanilla Persona 5's, so all we can do is hope that things will get better from here. With how long the wait for this gem of a game was, fans were ecstatic when it finally made its worldwide release in April of 2017. However, some players were surprised to discover that there was something really off about the long-awaited localization of Persona 5. Soon after its release, fans quickly rushed to social media to show off all the weird, gibberish, and outright mistranslated dialogue inside of the game, some even claiming that the conversations between characters don't sound natural in the slightest, which people speculated was due to the localizer's choice to stick too close to Japanese. In fact, the localization of the game was so rough that it led to the creation of the site personaproblems.com, which compiles almost all of the translation flaws in Persona 5, along with suggestions on how to fix them. I highly suggest that you check it out. This led to a big debate within the fandom, some acting in defense of Atlus, saying that there's nothing wrong and that direct translations are better as they are more faithful to the Japanese script, while the other side of the argument being that the English localization falls incredibly short of the standard it should be held to, and that the best translations are ones that don't directly translate and instead reflect the feeling of the original. While in my own playthrough of the vanilla game, I can't say I've noticed any of these silly mistakes. After seeing them for myself, I must admit that they're a bit hard to ignore, and I can't help but agree that Atlus should have tried a bit harder. The best example highlighting this problem can be found on the previously mentioned site. Let me read it out for you. Hey. Minir. Okay. What? Alright. So, how did this even happen? I can't deny, Persona 5 is a really big game with tons of dialogue, but that doesn't justify it in the slightest, as this isn't a problem any other big JRPGs are faced with. A popular theory is that the reasoning behind this mess of a localization is Atlus's decision to hire a big team of translators and editors, leading to too many voices for one project. Thankfully, this story ends on a positive note, as in the end, Atlus actually listened to us and fixed many of these questionable errors in Persona 5's royal re-release. There are some things Atlus never fixed, however. RYUJI abuse! It's a big problem! For some inconceivable reason, the writers at Atlus find great joy in making RYUJI suffer, which brings us to two very questionable scenes that many of the Western audience found quite uncomfortable to watch. There are numerous scenes where RYUJI gets beat up, but the one that is without a doubt the most tone deaf is the one right at the end of the Shido arc, where RYUJI risks his life to ensure that his friends can escape the crumbling palace alive. He gives them a thumbs up as a final show of support before an unexpected explosion blows him away and the Phantom Thieves escape to the real world, to find RYUJI missing. When it is later shown that RYUJI is indeed alive, he makes a light-hearted remark which results in him being severely beaten by the female members of the group to the point of falling unconscious, at which point they all abandon him on the street without a single care for his safety. While this is just one of many anime tropes that Atlus included in the game, the execution is absolutely abhorrent. I truly don't understand how anyone thought this was a good idea, even if the Japanese audience voted it as one of the funniest scenes in Persona 5, with RYUJI's history of abuse from Kamoshida and even his own father. Being forced to watch RYUJI get beat up by his own friends did not sit well with many Western fans. Many people were hoping that this scene would be altered or outright removed in Persona 5 Royal, however, they were left disappointed to find out that Atlus did not bother changing anything. The only thing I can commend Atlus for is that they had the restraint to leave out scrapped animations and voice lines that show each and every party member beating up RYUJI individually, as if this scene couldn't get any worse. Unfortunately, RYUJI's suffering doesn't end quite yet. Now it's time to talk about the infamous gay men scene. If you aren't aware of how this scene plays out in the vanilla game, a couple of unnamed gay men approach RYUJI during a mandatory visit to Shinjuku. They acknowledge that RYUJI is young and under the age of consent, yet despite that begin to express their affection towards him. RYUJI tries to escape the situation, hinting that he's starting to feel really uneasy, yet the pair then proceed to grab him as RYUJI shouts, "Let me go!" And we, as the protagonist, have no choice but to play along. It is then implied that they drag him off and do things as the screen fades to black. Not only that, but these very same men appear once again during the group's trip to Hawaii, with the same unfunny joke playing out once again. The first palace in this game is entirely focused on Kamoshida's abuse and predatory nature, which makes the fact that the scene is played for laughs extremely disgusting. That's without taking into account that the stereotype of gay men being predators is already extremely harmful. I've heard a lot of people defend this scene, saying it isn't as bad as people think it is. Yet the Persona 5 anime confirms everyone's assumptions as it shows what the men actually do to him. Now, is this one scene really enough to destroy such a brilliant game? Of course not. But I do feel that people's criticisms of this moment are completely justified. In fact, this scene received so many complaints that unlike the previous scene, it actually did get a change in Royal. So, how did Atlus fix this controversial scene? They gave the men names and made them crossdressers instead? I guess that works? Now, instead of the joke being sexual assault, it is instead forcing RYUJI to cross-dress, which I must admit is less graphic, but at that point, they might as well have saved themselves the headache and just removed the scene entirely. In my opinion, the game gains nothing from this joke, and all it does is leave a nasty taste in the mouth of a substantial chunk of Western Persona fans. Most important of all, RYUJI really deserves to be treated better. Yet somehow, the only people Atlus treats worse than RYUJI is their own fans. To nobody's surprise, the release of Persona 5 Royal was a massive success, and it's absolutely deserved. It turned a masterpiece of a game into a timeless classic, though unfortunately, it fell victim to one of the game industry's biggest plagues: Day 1 DLC. While I think there are arguments to be had on both sides, that fact alone was enough to anger a number of die-hard Persona fans. While not being the first Atlus game to include Day 1 DLC, at the time, people already considered Royal to be quite overpriced for a remaster of a game already playable on the PS4. So, the announcement of another round of expensive costume packs, in total costing the price of paying for the game a second time, just added more salt to the wound. Japanese fans had it especially bad as they were forced to pay for the DLC from the original game that they had already owned. Though thankfully, the worldwide release that came half a year later included all of the vanilla game's DLC for free. What are your thoughts on Atlus's implementation of Day 1 DLCs? Do you think their existence is justified? Let me know what you think in the comments. Did you know that only 0.9% of my viewers are subscribed? I'd appreciate it if you could raise it up. Anyways, where were we? Oh yeah. Persona 5 controversies. They sure do exist. Or do they? Leading up to Persona 5's release, many Korean fans were happy to find out that the game would come with Korean subtitles. However, that joy quickly turned to rage as they start to notice offensive imagery scattered all around the game. The culprit being the pattern of the rising sun flag, which Korean people find very offensive due to its historical associations with Japanese imperialism and expansion to Asia, showing up everywhere from RYUJI's shoes to spell icons to God knows where else. People quickly took to the streets and started protesting against Atlus, demanding that they— Except, that never really happened? An article published by Kotaku blew things way out of proportion, claiming that many Korean fans took great offense to Atlus's inclusion of the symbol. Well, it turned out, most Korean Persona fans kind of just didn't care. However, this didn't stop Atlus from taking action, as in the game's Korean release, they decided to censor all instances of this motif to avoid any and all backlash. Kinda makes you wish they did the same for us Western fans, huh? These changes can even be seen in the recent multi-platform Royal re-releases, as Atlus decided to use the textures from the Korean version of the game, along with entirely removing all traces of the RYUJI costume DLC due to the same historical sensitivity issues, which is slightly disappointing. However, this isn't the only Persona 5 controversy that the epic 100% trustworthy news site Kotaku tried to stir up. 2 whole years later, around the time of Joker's inclusion in Smash, they decided to accuse Atlus of including a slur in the game's opening song, Wake Up, Get Out There.
Let's go, let's play, retarded.
The fact that they chose to bring this up years after the release of the game already raised some serious doubts about this claim, and it didn't help that all it took was a quick Google search to find out that the real lyrics say retorted rather than the word that I am not allowed to say. Some fans even hit back at Kotaku, accusing them of being racist, as certain sounds are frequently mispronounced by Japanese speakers when they sing lyrics in English. Even worse, after getting called out, they refused to take responsibility for the blatant misinformation that they spread, and edited the article saying that fans allegedly pointed out that the singer says, the official lyrics are wrong. What? This was very much an interesting time to be a Persona fan. One that I actually look back to quite fondly, as it's oddly beautiful how the entire fanbase united to expose the lies of the rotten journalists at Kotaku. This did not deter them from writing even more absurd articles though. I won't dwell on it for too long because by this point, Kotaku has already completely lost any remaining semblance of credibility they once had. However, I find it quite amusing that in February of 2023, They somehow had the guts to criticize Atlus for being homophobic? But no, not for the notorious cutscene we previously mentioned, but rather because Atlus refuses to make RYUJI dateable? This isn't even worth discussing. Alright, fun's over. Back to the real drama. Denuvo. That name is enough to strike fear in many gamers' hearts. For those unaware, Denuvo is a form of anti-piracy solution known as DRM that several developers integrate inside of their games. Its purpose is to make games harder to crack and pirate. And while I won't deny that I've pirated a few games over the years, I must admit that DRM isn't such a bad idea on the surface, as it gives developers time to profit off of game sales before people figure out a way to pirate it. And given that those who decide to pirate the game months later weren't planning on paying for it in the first place, everyone wins as the devs get their money and eventually everyone gets to play. But here's the catch. Unfortunately, it has been proven that Denuvo substantially degrades the performance of games it is attached to, leading to a good few fans sharing their disappointment when Persona 5 Strikers was announced to include this anti-tampering tech, some even refusing to buy the game for this very reason. The effects of Denuvo have never been more apparent, but sadly, the uproar was not loud enough, as it ended up being incorporated in the recent Persona 5 PC re-release as well. Many Persona fans, veterans and newcomers alike, had many complaints to share about the game's performance on PC, stating that no matter how good of a computer you have, nothing could save you from frame drops and glitches. As much as I enjoyed playing Persona 5 Royal, even I experienced some hiccups along the way. However, we can't lose hope just yet. There have been a few instances of larger titles dropping Denuvo after a few months, as it's quite costly to keep up and simply isn't worth paying for after pirates find a way around it. So perhaps there's a chance Atlus will have a change of heart? Speaking of changes of heart, after the release of Vanilla Persona 5, Atlus sent a calling card in the form of a DMCA requesting the removal of the Patreon page for RPCS3, popular PS3 emulator. Their reasoning was that its developers are infringing on the intellectual property of Mr. Atlus by making the game playable on PC, stating that no version of Persona 5 should be playable on this platform, as doing so requires getting around the DRM protections they put in place. However, the request was denied by Patreon as they claimed that the emulator does not directly violate the Atlus IP, and that emulation is protected by the concept of fair use, meaning it would be unjust to completely delete the Patreon page, especially considering that it would have most likely led to the downfall of the project due to the lack of funding. The RPCS3 developers settled on simply removing all mentions of Persona 5 on its various websites, which seemed to calm things down and led to everyone forgetting about it. Nevertheless, it was truly an L for Atlus. Almost as big of an L as Atlus's recent statement on using art generated with the assistance of artificial intelligence in their games, in which they admitted to looking into ways to use AI art as part of game development in the near future. The AI art debate is a very hot topic on the internet as of now, and many fans were shocked to find out that the director behind one of the most stylish and beautiful games of the century is intrigued by the technology and thinks that there are a lot of fascinating uses for it, admitting that the Persona team is actively discussing ways to including AI in their upcoming titles. While not explicitly claiming that AI art will replace artists or that work fully made by AI are acceptable, he believes that this tech can be valuable during the early process of producing art, saying that using AI can be a way to generate results faster, and that it's something artists can take inspiration from to develop something really new and exciting. However, this technology is already often criticized for being lazy, dull, and boring, as well as for exploiting copyrighted content to train its machine learning algorithms. Still, many fans were simply disappointed because Persona 5's early concept art is unquestionably stunning and are concerned that the game's art direction will lose its charm. With how many video game development studios have gone out of their way to ban AI art in their games outright, I too was pretty shocked by this turn of events. While I do believe artificial intelligence has many potential uses in the game industry, replacing artists is definitely not what I'd like to see. Let's just hope Atlus changes their mind before Persona 6 releases, as otherwise, this might not bode well for the future of our beloved franchise. Now, for the most recent controversy. It's hard to say much on this topic as of the making of this video, the mobile game Persona 5 X is still in its beta phase and has yet to make its way out of the Chinese market. However, many Persona fans are already worried of how this game is going to turn out, as the publishers behind it, Perfect World Games, have a very questionable track record when it comes to many mobile games they have released in the past. What's worse is they have even been accused of unethical behavior such as hiring college graduates and then making them pay to work for them rather than giving them a wage. While I'd like to stay positive and keep my hopes high, many fans were ready to pack their bags and go as soon as they heard that the game was going to be a gacha. Gacha games are video games which encourage players to spend in-game currency for virtual items as they progress. While this way of gameplay can be done right, other games published by this studio have been met with quite a bit of backlash due to their greedy gambling mechanics and debatable business practices. Many fans suspect that this new game is going to be no more than a lame Chinese knockoff of Persona 5, which is a fair claim to make as despite having a completely new cast of characters, its story seems to be heavily inspired by the original game, at some points downright copying it. Though personally, I'm still pretty excited for it, as no matter how bad the game is going to end up being, I'm sure the music's going to be banging as always. Looks like only time will tell. It should go without saying that Atlus produces absolutely incredible video games, but I do believe it's vital to remember all of their mistakes and hold them accountable. Some might argue that bringing up all of these issues now, some years after they occurred, is a waste of time and only serves to stir up more conflict within the community. But I think it's important to remember the past, as the bigger the Persona franchise becomes, so does Atlus's greed. Most importantly, let's not lose sight of the fact that speaking out against all of these problems and issues afflicting our society is the very thing that makes us Persona fans in the first place. So never forget, no matter what anyone says, you'll have the power to make a difference. So, have I missed anything? Please let me know. If you're interested in seeing more Persona 5 video essays like this one, be sure to like and subscribe and check out my other videos on the 2 endings of Persona 5. And with that, I thank you for watching. It was fun while it lasted. Goodbye.